We started off on the base of Rocket Internet infrastructure. So Rocket Internet has been running websites even before the investment was made in Southeast Asia. So even today, some of our core systems are legacy from that time. Over time, we've developed our own tech infrastructure. So we have a tech hub in Vietnam. So it's an independent office that's purely focused on product and development. And then we've recently opened up one in Moscow. Don't ask me why, but we have one in Moscow now, where we have a decent size of developers, programming teams that are working on taking our platform to the next level. In general, infrastructure works incrementally. So you do an investment like the platforms we started on. They live with us till certain stages of traffic and throughput and capability, and then it becomes too cumbersome to manage, and then you have to do one major investment, step up, and so on and so forth. So for us, the Moscow investment is kind of forward-looking, where we are now getting ready for the next wave of our platform. When we entered these markets, we were fundamentally looking at the basic macroeconomics of the region. We have large populations that have a big young proportion, which means that this population is going to, over time, become more employed and will have more disposable income. It is underpenetrated internet-wise, which means that over time, telecom and internet is going to be more prevalent. I'm missing one or two others. And yeah, exactly. So, and we are operating in environments where your per capita retail square footage is significantly behind what you have in the West. So these elements then become key to having a large e-commerce market available somewhere in the future, and it's about just capitalizing on it by being there. So does that help on the first one? Okay. Second, you're saying, how do we promote e-commerce? How do we get the customers' trust? So I think that for at least initially when we started, that was our biggest challenge. How do you get a customer who doesn't shop online, has had some interactions on the internet, but they were scammy, and how do you get that person to start trusting you? And so within our markets, we have a spectrum. Singapore, most developed, Malaysia, somewhere very close. And on the other side, you've got a market like Vietnam, where you have very little bank account penetration, you have very little internet penetration, and so on. So there were some fundamentals that were common across these. One, logistics is poor, doesn't exist. Your existing courier companies don't know how to do last mile. If you're an e-commerce business, while the website is all fancy and flashy and very important, if you can't do the operations, there's no business. So, and literally that's core to what we do. So for that proposition, we started working on opening up our own footprint, our own locations across these countries to be able to then provide a reliable service. We started working with local partners, but then in there was a lot of micromanagement of these partners to get the kind of service that we were looking for. So that's one. The second common thread we had in the countries was broadly either the customers didn't have plastic or even bank accounts, or they didn't want to use it online. In terms of a short to mid-term traction or receptiveness, I would say that market will be Indonesia. It's a fantastic market. It's 250 million people. They are just realizing how great internet is. They're buying their first mobile phones. They're They're seeing all of these products online that they can't get in their local malls, and they can pay by cash. So Indonesia is fantastic from that point of view. Historically, it's been Malaysia, purely because it's more mature. You have more people that have credit cards and they know how to buy online. I think of all our markets, Vietnam has a way to go in terms of pure macroeconomics. So bulk of the population just doesn't have bank accounts. Whoever does have bank accounts culturally don't trust the banks. So there's every payday they have a queue outside their banks where people would go and withdraw all their salary and keep it at home. So that's Vietnam. And then Singapore is a completely different animal. It's very competitive. The proposition we put forward there is very different. So Singapore, we are not thinking of Singapore exactly the way we are thinking of the other markets. Our entire where to play, right to win, all of that is very different. The choices were made on more broad metrics than whether we'll be profitable in year 3. Just too much. There's too much variability in these things. We chose the markets fundamentally based on macroeconomics, the factors I just described, population, disposable incomes, GDP, retail space, and B, the fact that if you think about where the biggest e-commerce markets are, so mature markets you have on one side where you have US and Western Europe, super mature and developed. Emerging markets, you've got Brazil on one side, which is a big market. You've got Nigeria on the other side, which is also a relatively big market with similar macroeconomics. You've got India and you've got China, but India and China are like the crown jewels of e-commerce markets after the US. So we expect those markets to be extremely hot. There'll be lots of investment, the battle would be tough, and some of the businesses won't make it. Our entire play was go where you have a bigger right to win. Southeast Asia at that time was so overshadowed by China and so overshadowed by India. The market made sense. It's still 550 million people. It's not a small number. It's almost double the size of the US in terms of pure population. The challenge for this kind of a play is that you're now dealing with 6 different governments and 6 different regulations, 6 different cultures. Sure, that's challenging, but then that's also your advantage because no one else is there because of these things. But I mean, you can argue out whether you would be a profitable business in an underdeveloped market when you're entering into e-commerce, but it's a moot argument at best. Fundamentally, you're betting on the macroeconomics. We went in for let's get in there to build a major sustainable business, a leader in e-commerce for 500 million people. That's a big bet. If on the other hand you're talking about a local grocery delivery model, probably safer to start with a survey to see where the market is. So it's a bit tricky to answer, but I mean, one way is the classical method of you come up with an idea, you find the people for whom this idea is useful and figure out how much they're willing to pay for it, and then hone your idea through putting on those colored caps and all that. That's the classical way of coming out with a potentially successful business idea. And then you have the other stream, which the US is full of these businesses, where you're going for disruption. You're either taking something which has disrupted another market and you know it broadly works, or you're going for something that just doesn't exist and you really believe this will be disruptive. So over there, then your ability to do market research is a bit limited. I mean, if you think about it, the only guys who are right now doing something great when it comes to electric cars is Tesla. Much bigger guys have been in the market for a much, much, much longer time and thinking about this. But the consumer doesn't exactly always know what's best. Sometimes you have to go in. So some of those bets are more forward-looking.